The night Lena Cruz died and was reborn, she was scrubbing blood from marble floors while her baby kicked inside her belly. She didn't know the blood belonged to a man who'd tried to kill her boss, didn't know that the father of her child had stolen $3 million from the most dangerous man in the city, didn't know that in 60 seconds she'd be thrown against a wall by hands that could crush her throat, or that those same hands would later cradle her face with a gentleness that terrified her more than violence ever could. Want to see how Lena survives a world built on bullets and betrayal? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. The Grandview Hotel smelled like money and lies. Lena had learned to recognize both during her 8 months pushing a cleaning cart through hallways where a single night's stay cost more than she made in 2 weeks. The carpets whispered under wheels that needed oil. Her back ached in that deep, relentless way that meant she'd been on her feet too long, and the baby, 6 months along now, heavy and real, pressed against her bladder with what felt like deliberate cruelty. She paused outside suite 1847, one hand on her cart, the other pressed to the small of her back. The hallway stretched empty in both directions, thick with silence and the kind of lighting that made everything look softer than it was. Expensive, clean, nothing like the studio apartment she shared with 2 other women in a building where the heat worked 3 days out of 7. Her phone buzzed. She didn't need to look to know it was another message Victor wouldn't answer. Please, I need to know you're okay. The baby's moving now. She kicks at night. Nothing. 3 weeks of nothing. The door to 1847 opened and a man stepped out. Lena's breath caught. She'd seen Adrian Vieri before. Everyone who worked at the Grandview had seen him, but always from a distance, always in motion, surrounded by men in dark suits who moved like shadows with teeth. He owned the hotel, owned half the city, if you believed the whispers that traveled through the break room. People said his family had built their fortune on construction and real estate, but everyone knew the foundation was something darker, older, soaked in blood that had dried decades ago, but never really washed away. Up close, he was worse than she'd imagined. Tall, built like a man who knew how to use his body as a weapon. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and harder edges. His suit probably cost more than her yearly salary, tailored so precisely it seemed like a second skin. But it was his eyes that made her fingers tighten on the cart handle. Dark, assessing, the kind of eyes that saw through people, past their smiles and excuses, straight down to the bone. He looked at her. Not through her, the way most guests did. At her. Saw her. Evening, he said. His voice was smooth, controlled, but there was something underneath it, gravel and glass. Good evening, sir. Lena kept her eyes down, her voice soft. The universal language of service workers everywhere. I'm not here. I don't exist. Please don't notice me. But he was already moving past her, and she could breathe again. She pushed her cart forward toward the elevators at the end of the hall when the first shot cracked through the silence. The sound didn't register at first. Too sharp. Too clean. Like a champagne cork, her brain insisted, but her body knew better. Her body was already dropping, already curling around the swell of her belly as instinct older than thought took over. The second shot was louder, closer, glass shattered somewhere behind her. A man shouted. Not words, just a raw burst of sound. And then there were footsteps, running, and more voices, and her ears were ringing so loud she couldn't tell where anything was coming from. Hands grabbed her. Lena screamed, tried to scream, but the sound died in her throat as she was yanked backward, away from the elevators, away from the broken glass now glittering on the carpet like scattered diamonds. The hands were hard, unforgiving, and they lifted her like she weighed nothing despite the baby, despite her size. Don't move. Adrian Vieri's voice, close to her ear. His body was a wall at her back, solid and unyielding, and she could feel his heartbeat, steady, controlled, nothing like the panic clawing through her chest, against her shoulder blade. Another shot. The wall beside them exploded in a shower of plaster and paint. Fuck! Adrian's grip tightened. Marco, east stairwell! Someone was shooting at them. At him. She was just in the way. Just another piece of furniture in a hallway that had turned into a war zone. And the baby was kicking, frantic little movements that felt like Morse code. Help, 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 help. I'm pregnant, Lena gasped, As if that mattered, as if bullets cared. I know. Adrian's voice was grim. Stay down. He moved, dragging her with him, keeping his body between her and whatever was happening in the hallway. She caught a glimpse of a man, young, wild-eyed, holding a gun that shook in his grip, before one of Adrian's security team appeared from nowhere and took him down with brutal efficiency. The gun skittered across the marble, spinning to a stop near her foot. Everything went quiet. Not real quiet. Her ears were still ringing, and somewhere an alarm was shrieking, and people were shouting, but the shooting had stopped, and that was close enough to silence to make her legs go weak. Adrian's hands shifted, gentle now, turning her to face him. Are you hurt? Lena shook her head, couldn't find words. The baby? I don't know. I don't... Her voice cracked. The baby was still moving. That was good, wasn't it? That meant something. Adrian's eyes went dark. He looked over her shoulder and his jaw tightened. Get her out of here. Now. Marco, with me. I want him alive if possible. Sir, we should move you to... Now, Marco. Strong hands, not Adrian's this time, took her arm. Another security guard, older, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. He was already pulling her toward a door she'd never noticed before, hidden in the wall's decorative paneling. Wait, Lena tried to pull back. I need to... My cart, my supplies. I have to clock out. The guard didn't even slow down. Ma'am, someone just tried to kill Mr. Vieri in front of 20 witnesses and 3 security cameras. You think anyone gives a damn about your cart right now? He had a point. The hidden door opened onto a service corridor that smelled like industrial cleaner and old concrete. Emergency lighting cast everything in harsh white, turning the guard's face into a collection of shadows and angles. He moved fast, one hand on her elbow, guiding her through a maze of passages she'd never seen despite 8 months of working in this building. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. I need to go home. Can't do that. Lena stopped walking, just planted her feet and refused to move, even when the guard tried to pull her forward. 8 months pregnant and exhausted and so far past scared, she'd come out the other side into something that felt almost like anger. I don't work for you, she said. I work for the hotel, housekeeping. I clean rooms and empty trash and pretend I don't see anything that happens in those rooms. And in exchange, they pay me $9 an hour under the table because I don't have papers. That's it. That's the entire transaction. Someone shooting at your boss doesn't change that. The guard looked at her like she'd just announced she could fly. Lady, you were standing 3 feet from Mr. Vieri when that kid opened fire. You're a witness. Maybe the only one who got a clear look at the shooter before my guys took him down. You think you're just going to clock out and go home like this was a normal shift? I didn't see anything. Doesn't matter what you saw. Matters what whoever sent that kid thinks you saw. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Lena's tired brain didn't want to process. I just want to go home, she said quietly. The guard's expression softened, just a fraction. I know, but right now home isn't safe. Not until we figure out who ordered the hit and why. Come on, Mr. Vieri's going to want to talk to you. They kept moving. The service corridors gave way to an underground parking garage that was almost empty at this hour. The guard led her to a black SUV with windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. He opened the back door, and the interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Get in. Someone will be with you in a few minutes. And if I don't? He looked at her, really looked at her, took in the uniform that didn't quite fit anymore, the shoes held together with superglue, the belly swollen with a baby whose father had disappeared, and something like sympathy crossed his face. Then you walk out of here. Go back to whatever place you call home, and hope to hell nobody followed you. Hope that whoever wanted Mr. Vieri dead doesn't decide you're a loose end worth tying up. Hope your door has a good lock and your neighbors are the kind who call the cops when they hear screaming. He paused. How's that sound? Lena got in the car. The door closed with an expensive thunk that sealed her inside, a silence so complete it felt like being underwater. The baby kicked, a rolling movement that pressed against her ribs. She put her hand over the spot, trying to offer comfort she didn't feel. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry, baby. This wasn't supposed to happen. None of it was supposed to happen. Victor was supposed to come back. The money he'd been saving was supposed to be enough for them to get a real place, somewhere with heat that worked, and windows that closed all the way. He was supposed to be there when the baby came, supposed to hold Lena's hand and tell her everything would be okay, even if it wasn't. Instead, he'd vanished 3 weeks ago with nothing but a text. Have to go away for a while. Don't try to find me. And now she was sitting in a car that cost more than she'd make in 10 years, waiting to talk to a man whose eyes saw too much, about a shooting that had turned her from invisible to impossible to ignore. The driver's door opened. Lena jumped, her heart kicking into overdrive. But it was just the guard from before. He slid behind the wheel without looking at her, started the engine with a purr that sounded like contentment. Where are we going? Mr. Vieri's estate. About 40 minutes outside the city. I have work tomorrow. I need to. Called it in. You're taking a few personal days, paid. That stopped her. The Grandview didn't do paid personal days, not for housekeeping, not for anyone who earned less than a manager's salary. I don't understand. The guard pulled out of the parking space, navigating through the garage with the ease of long practice. You don't need to understand. You just need to sit tight and let Mr. Vieri handle things. I don't even know him. Yeah, well, you do now. They drove in silence. The garage gave way to city streets. Quiet at this hour, most of the traffic thinned to nothing, and then to a highway that cut through darkness, punctuated by streetlights and the occasional gas station. Lena watched it all through tinted windows that made everything look distant, unreal, like watching a movie of someone else's life. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, hope flaring bright and sharp in her chest. Victor, finally, he's going to explain everything. But it was just Rosa, her roommate. Where are you? Marco's friend saw cops at the hotel. You okay? Lena's thumbs hovered over the keyboard. What could she say? I'm fine. Just witnessed an assassination attempt, and now I'm in a car with a scary man taking me to an even scarier man's house. Don't wait up. She typed. Work thing. Be back tomorrow. Rosa's response came fast. You better not be in labor without me, bitch. Despite everything, the fear, the exhaustion, the surreal nightmare her night had become, Lena smiled. Just a little. Not in labor. Promise. She put the phone away and closed her eyes. The baby was quiet now, settled, and the car's motion was almost soothing, hypnotic. She could feel herself starting to drift, that terrible exhaustion that came from running on adrenaline and nothing else finally catching up to her. When she opened her eyes again, they'd left the highway behind. The road was narrower now, winding through darkness that pressed close on both sides. Trees, she realized. Lots of them. They'd driven into what looked like a forest, though she could see lights in the distance. A house, massive and sprawling, lit up like a small city. Welcome to the estate, the guard said. Estate didn't begin to cover it, and the house, mansion really, because calling it a house was like calling the ocean a puddle, rose from the darkness like something out of a dream. Or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. Stone and glass and wood, all flowing together in a design that managed to look both modern and ancient at the same time. 3 stories at least, maybe more, with wings spreading out on either side of a central structure topped by what looked like a tower. The driveway curved through manicured grounds that probably required a full-time staff just to maintain. Lena caught glimpses of gardens, stone pathways, a fountain that wasn't running at this hour. Everything spoke of money in a way that made the Grandview look cheap. They stopped in front of massive wooden doors that would have looked at home on a cathedral. Come on, the guard said. Mr. Vieri's waiting. Her legs were shaky when she got out of the car. The baby had shifted, pressing down in a way that made walking uncomfortable, but she followed the guard up stone steps worn smooth by years of use. The doors opened before they reached them. Another security guard, she assumed, though this one wore a regular shirt and slacks instead of a suit. Inside was worse. Marble floors, a staircase that swept upward in a graceful curve. Artwork on the walls that looked old and probably was. The kind of paintings you saw in museums behind velvet ropes. A chandelier that caught the light and threw it back in 1,000 different directions. And Adrian Vieri standing at the base of the stairs like he'd been waiting. He'd changed out of the suit. Now he wore dark pants and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, showing forearms marked with what looked like old scars. His hair was slightly mussed, and there was a cut on his left cheekbone that hadn't been there before. Fresh, still bleeding a little. He looked dangerous, tired, real in a way he hadn't been in the hotel hallway. "Miss Cruz?" His voice was quieter than before, almost gentle. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't have a choice." Something flickered in his eyes. "No, I suppose you didn't. Are you hurt?" "You already asked me that." "I'm asking again." Lena met his gaze, held it longer than she probably should have. "I'm fine. The baby's fine. Can I go home now?" "Not yet." He moved closer, and she had to fight the urge to step back. "We need to talk. But first, have you eaten?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "Food. When did you last eat?" She tried to remember. There'd been a protein bar around 2, grabbed between rooms, some crackers from the break room vending machine around 6. Her stomach chose that moment to growl, loud enough to be embarrassing. Adrian's mouth twitched. Almost a smile, but not quite. "Come on, kitchen's this way." He walked, and after a moment's hesitation, Lena followed. What else could she do? The kitchen was bigger than her entire apartment. Professional-grade appliances, countertops that gleamed under recessed lighting, a table that could seat 12 easily. Adrian moved through it with the ease of familiarity, opening cabinets, pulling out plates. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the stools at the island. Lena sat. Her feet were grateful. "Do you have allergies, food sensitivities?" "Are you seriously asking about my dietary restrictions right now?" "Someone tried to kill me tonight. You were there. That makes you either a witness or a liability, depending on who you ask. Either way, you're staying here until I figure out which." He pulled bread from a drawer, cold cuts from a massive refrigerator. "So yes, I'm seriously asking about your dietary restrictions, because you look like you're about to fall over, and a pregnant woman falling over in my kitchen is the last thing I need right now." He wasn't wrong about the falling over part. "No allergies," Lena said quietly. Adrian made her a sandwich. Not a regular sandwich, this was thick slices of what looked like actual bakery bread, layers of turkey and cheese and vegetables arranged with a precision that suggested either training or obsession. He set it in front of her along with a glass of milk and a smaller plate holding sliced apples. "Eat." It should have been offensive being ordered around like this, but the sandwich smelled amazing and the milk was cold and her body was screaming for fuel. Lena ate. Adrian watched her for a moment, then turned to the sink, wetting a clean cloth. He pressed it to his cheekbone, wincing slightly. "What happened?" The words came out before Lena could stop them. "After I left." "Who was he, Bunny?" "Nobody?" Adrian's voice went flat. "Some kid, barely 20, hopped up on something that made him brave and stupid. Hired gun with no real training and a pocket full of cash." "Is he dead?" "No. Wish he was, would make things simpler, but my men took him alive." He lowered the cloth, studied the blood on it with detached interest. "He's being questioned now." Questioned, right. Lena didn't want to think too hard about what that word meant in this context. "And me?" She set down what remained of the sandwich, her appetite suddenly gone. "Why am I here? I didn't see anything. I was just—" "You were standing next to me when it happened." Adrian turned, leaned against the counter, arms crossed over his chest. "That makes you a target. Whoever sent that kid won't care that you're nobody. They'll care that you might have seen something, heard something. They'll care that keeping you quiet is easier than taking the chance you didn't." "So what? I'm supposed to just stay here? Hide? For now? And my job? My life?" "Your job is cleaning hotel rooms for poverty wages while living in a place that probably violates half a dozen housing codes." His voice was matter-of-fact, no judgment, just stating facts. "Your life, from what I can tell, consists of working yourself into the ground for a baby whose father—" He stopped. Something changed in his expression. "What's his name?" Lena's blood went cold. "What?" "The father. What's his name?" "I don't— Why does that matter?" "Because 3 weeks ago someone stole $3 million from me. Cash from an investment deal that was supposed to go through my accounts. Instead, it vanished, along with the man who was handling the transfer." Adrian's eyes bored into her. Victor Hale, mid-30s, brown hair, charm for days, and loyalty for about 5 minutes. Worked, in my financial division. Sound familiar? The kitchen tilted. Lena gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles going white. "Victor, Victor. The man who'd promised her a future, who'd talked about getting a place together, who'd made love to her with a gentleness that made her believe in second chances. No, she whispered. No, he works at a bank. He told me he works at a bank downtown, processing loans. He worked for me, in a division that handles cash transfers for businesses that prefer to keep certain transactions off the books. And 3 weeks ago, he took $3 million of my dollars and disappeared. Adrian pushed off the counter, moved closer. You said he vanished 3 weeks ago. Did he say where he was going? He didn't. It was just a text. Have to go away for a while. Don't try to find me. Nothing else. Her hands went to her belly, protective. I thought maybe he got scared. About the baby. About being a father. You didn't think he was a thief who'd stolen from a man like me and run before I could put a bullet in his head. The bluntness of it knocked the air from her lungs. I didn't know, Lena said. I swear I didn't know anything about any of this. He was kind to me. He made me feel like maybe things could be different, and I was stupid enough to believe him. Adrian studied her, and she couldn't read his expression. Couldn't tell if he believed her or if he was calculating the best way to make her useful or dispose of her. You're carrying his child. Yes. That makes you leverage. The word hung between them, cold and precise. He's not coming back for me, Lena said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. Too calm, too steady, like she was talking about someone else's life. If he cared enough to come back, he wouldn't have left in the first place. Your leverage is worthless. Maybe. Or maybe he's more sentimental than I'm giving him credit for. Adrian turned away, ran a hand through his hair. Either way, you're staying here. I've got 24-hour security, cameras on every entrance, and enough firepower to hold off a small army. You'll be safe. I'll be a prisoner. Call it what you want. You're not leaving until I find Victor and get my money back. And until I know who hired that kid to put bullets in my head. Anger flared, hot and bright. You can't just keep me here. I have rights. I'll call the police and tell them what? That Adrian Vieri is holding you against your will? That you're a witness to an attempted assassination? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. The cops in this city either work for me or pretend I don't exist. You call them, they'll take a statement and file it somewhere it'll never see daylight. Then they'll call me and let me know you're being difficult. So I'm just supposed to accept this, stay in your house, eat your food, wait around until you decide I'm useful or disposable. You're supposed to stay alive long enough to have that baby. Adrian's voice went quiet. Dangerous. Because right now, you and that kid are the only things keeping Victor from vanishing into whatever hole he's crawled into. He took my money. He made me look weak. And in my world, looking weak is the same as being dead. He moved past her, heading for the door, then stopped. There's a room made up on the second floor, east wing, third door on the left. Bathrooms attached. You'll find clothes in the closet. I had someone pick up a few things in your size. If you need anything else, tell Marco. He's head of security. He'll make sure you have it. And if I try to leave? Adrian looked back at her, and for just a moment she saw something in his eyes that might have been regret, or pity, or nothing at all. Don't, he said simply. Then he was gone, and Lena was alone in a kitchen that cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime, carrying the child of a man who'd destroyed both their lives, held captive by someone who might kill her or protect her, or both. The baby kicked. Lena put both hands over her belly, closed her eyes, and tried very hard not to cry. The room was obscene. That was the only word for it. Obscene in its size, its luxury, its casual display of wealth that didn't even bother to apologize for existing. The bed could have fit 4 people comfortably. The windows, massive things that stretched nearly floor to ceiling, looked out over grounds she couldn't fully see in the darkness. The bathroom had a tub big enough to swim in and a shower with enough heads to qualify as a small water park. And the closet. Lena stood in front of it, staring at clothes that still had tags attached. Maternity clothes, all in her size, ranging from casual to formal. Shoes lined up on built-in shelves, a robe that felt like wearing a cloud. Someone had known. Someone had anticipated this, her being here, needing clothes, needing to stay. The thought made her skin crawl. She should run, should find a way out of this house, get back to the city, disappear into the kind of anonymous poverty where people like Adrian Vieri didn't bother to look. She could change her name, move to a different city, have the baby somewhere far from here. But Victor had found her once. If he could do it, so could others. And the baby needed safety, needed food and shelter and medical care Lena couldn't provide on her own. She'd learned that lesson already, working herself to exhaustion for wages that barely covered rent and food, knowing she couldn't afford a hospital when the time came, that she'd probably end up giving birth in some clinic that didn't ask too many questions about insurance or legal status. Here, she was a prisoner. But she was a prisoner with a full stomach and a soft bed and the promise, however temporary, of protection. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, felt it give beneath her weight like an embrace. Her body was screaming for sleep, for rest, for just a few hours where she didn't have to think about anything. She lay down, just for a minute. The pillow smelled clean, faintly of lavender. She was asleep before she could talk herself out of it. Morning came with sunlight and the smell of coffee. Lena woke disoriented, her body sluggish and her mind struggling to piece together where she was and why. The bed was too soft. The room was too quiet. Everything was wrong. Then she remembered. The shooting. Adrian. Victor's betrayal spreading out in front of her like a stain she couldn't scrub away. Someone knocked on the door. "Miss Cruz, you awake?" Not Adrian's voice. Older, female, with an accent that sounded Eastern European. "Yes," Lena called. Her voice came out rough. The door opened and a woman entered, 50s maybe, with steel gray hair pulled back in a bun and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. She carried a tray laden with food. "I'm Elena. I manage the house." She set the tray on the nightstand. Eggs, toast, fruit, juice, more food than Lena usually ate in a day. "Mr. Vieri asked me to make sure you're comfortable. Do you need anything?" "To go home." Elena's expression didn't change. "Besides that." "No, thank you." The woman nodded, started to leave, then paused. "He's not a monster, you know. Mr. Vieri. Dangerous, yes. Violent when he needs to be, but not a monster. He's keeping me here against my will. He's keeping you alive. There's a difference." Elena's eyes softened, just slightly. "Eat. The baby needs it even if you don't want it." She left before Lena could respond. The food was good, too good. Lena ate because her body demanded it, because the baby was hungry, because refusing seemed pointless when she was already trapped. After, she showered in the ridiculous bathroom, dressed in clothes that fit perfectly and felt expensive against her skin, and tried to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do now. The answer came in the form of Marco, the head of security, knocking on her door just after 10. "Mr. Vieri wants to see you, downstairs in his office." Of course he did. The office was on the first floor, down a hallway lined with more artwork and closed doors that probably led to rooms she'd never see. Marco opened one of them, gestured her inside, then closed it behind her with a soft click that sounded like finality. Adrian sat behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of dark wood. He was reading something on a tablet, his expression focused, and he didn't look up immediately when she entered. Lena stood there, waiting, her hands folded over her belly. Finally, he set the tablet down and met her eyes. "How did you sleep?" "Like a prisoner." "Fair." He gestured to one of the chairs facing his desk. "Sit. We need to talk." She sat because standing felt like making a point that wouldn't matter anyway. Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying her with that same unsettling intensity from the night before. "The kid from last night talked. Took some convincing, but he talked." But Lena's stomach clenched. She didn't want to know what convincing meant. He was hired by a man named Dmitry Koslov, Russian, been operating in the city for about 2 years, trying to muscle in on territories that belong to other people. Specifically, territories that belong to me. Adrian's fingers drummed once on the desk. Apparently, Dmitry thought killing me would open up opportunities. He was wrong. What does this have to do with me? Nothing. And everything. Adrian stood, moved to the window, looked out over grounds that probably stretched for acres. Victor stealing from me, Dmitry making a move. They're connected. Victor had been feeding information to Dmitry for months. Financial records, security details, schedules. He set me up to be robbed, and when that worked, Dmitri got ambitious. Figured if he could kill me, he'd take over everything I've built. The pieces clicked together, and Lena felt sick. Victor helped plan the assassination. Yes. And you're the woman carrying Victor Hale's baby, which makes you either bait or insurance, depending on how smart Victor is. Adrian turned to face her. My men are looking for him. When they find him, and they will, I'll use you to make sure he cooperates. He won't come for me. I already told you. He will if he thinks you're in danger, if he thinks I'll hurt you, or the baby, to get what I want. Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. He's a coward and a thief, but he's not completely heartless. He'll make some kind of move, and when he does, I'll have him. Lena stood, her legs shaky but her voice steady. And after? When you have your money and Victor is dead or whatever you're planning to do to him, what happens to me? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. I haven't decided yet, he said finally. At least he was honest. The hours bled into days, and the days began to blur. Lena existed in a strange kind of limbo, too comfortable to be called captivity, too restricted to be called freedom. The estate was enormous, and she was allowed to move through most of it under Marco's watchful eye. The library held books in languages she couldn't read. The gardens stretched on forever, carefully maintained paths winding between flower beds that probably required a team to keep alive. There was a greenhouse, a pool house, even a small chapel that looked like it hadn't been used in years. All of it belonged to Adrian Vieri, and none of it felt real. She saw him in fragments, passing in hallways, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and tense. Through windows, standing in the driveway while men in dark suits reported things that made his jaw tighten. Once, late at night, she'd come downstairs for water and found him in the living room with a glass of something amber, staring at nothing. He'd looked at her then, and she'd seen something in his eyes. Exhaustion, maybe, or the weight of decisions that didn't come with good options, before his expression had shuttered closed. Go to bed, Miss Cruz. She'd gone. On the fourth day, Elena brought her to a different room on the second floor, smaller than the bedroom, with windows facing east and furniture that looked like it belonged to someone who actually lived here rather than just passing through. There was a desk, a comfortable chair, a bookshelf filled with novels in English. Mr. Vieri thought you might want a space that isn't just a bedroom, Elena said, setting down fresh towels that Lena didn't need. You can read, rest, whatever you like. There's a laptop in the desk drawer if you want to use it. Internet access is limited, but you can watch movies, write, keep yourself occupied. How thoughtful of my captor. Elena's mouth quirked, almost a smile. He tries. After she left, Lena explored the room with the kind of careful attention you give to things that might vanish if you look away too long. The books were well worn, their spines creased from repeated reading. Literary fiction mostly, with a few thrillers mixed in. Someone had loved these books enough to keep them. The laptop was newer, expensive, the kind of machine that probably cost more than 3 months of her old salary. She opened it, half expecting to find it locked or monitored, but it booted up normally. The desktop was clean, no personal files, just a basic setup with access to streaming services and a word processor. No email, no social media, no way to reach the outside world. Lena sat at the desk and tried to write down everything that had happened. The shooting, Victor's betrayal, Adrian's cold calculation about her usefulness, but the words wouldn't come. Her hands hovered over the keyboard, and all she could think about was the baby moving inside her, pressing against her ribs like a reminder that nothing about this situation was abstract or temporary. She was 7 months pregnant now. In 2 months, maybe less, she'd give birth to Victor's child, who was being used as bait to catch a thief. The absurdity of it would have been funny if it weren't so terrifying. A knock interrupted her spiral. "Come in," she called, expecting Elena or maybe Marco with another message from Adrian. Instead, Adrian himself walked through the door. He'd changed since the last time she'd seen him. His clothes were more casual now, dark jeans and a sweater that made him look younger, almost approachable. But his eyes still carried that weight, that sense of a man who'd seen too much and remembered all of it. "You settling in?" he asked. Lena closed the laptop. "Is that what we're calling this? Settling in? Would you prefer I use a different phrase?" "I'd prefer you let me go. We've had this conversation." Adrian moved into the room, his presence somehow making the space feel smaller. You're not leaving until this is resolved. I thought I made that clear. Crystal clear. Doesn't mean I have to like it. He studied her for a moment, and she couldn't read his expression. Elena said you haven't been eating much. The breakfast trays keep coming back half finished. I'm not hungry. The baby needs nutrition. The baby's fine. I'd know if something was wrong. Would you? Adrian's voice sharpened. When's the last time you saw a doctor? Had a checkup? Made sure everything's developing the way it should? Lena's hands tightened in her lap. I was going to go to the clinic. Before all this happened. There's a place downtown that doesn't ask too many questions about insurance. A clinic. He said it like the word tasted bad. You were going to have a baby in some back alley operation where they probably reuse needles and can't afford proper equipment. It's what I could afford. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Lena stood, her frustration boiling over into something sharper. You think I wanted this? You think I planned to get pregnant by a man who turned out to be a lying thief? I was doing the best I could with what I had, which was nothing. No papers, no legal status, no safety net. Just a job that paid under the table in a studio apartment with 2 other women who needed the space as much as I did. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. There's a doctor coming tomorrow, Dr. Sarah Chen. She specializes in high-risk pregnancies, and she's discreet. She'll examine you, make sure everything's okay with the baby. I don't need... Yes, you do, and before you argue this isn't a request, you're carrying Victor Hale's child under my roof, and I'm not taking chances with complications that could have been prevented. He paused. Consider it self-interest. A healthy baby is better leverage than a sick one. The words hit like a slap, even though he'd meant them to be practical. You're a real bastard, you know that? I've been called worse. Adrian moved toward the door, then stopped. There's a gym on the lower level. Pool's heated if you want to swim. Walking the grounds is fine as long as Marco knows where you are. You don't have to stay locked in your room just because you're angry. I'm not angry. I'm terrified. The admission surprised her as much as it seemed to surprise him. Adrian turned back, and for the first time since she'd met him, his expression softened into something that might have been sympathy. Good. Terrified keeps you careful, keeps you from doing something stupid like trying to run. Would you really hurt me if I tried to leave? He was quiet for a long moment. I don't hurt pregnant women, but I can't speak for whoever's out there looking for Victor. You walk out that door, you're on your own. No protection, no resources, just you and a baby against people who won't hesitate to use both of you to get what they want. And you're different? I'm using you to get Victor. They'd use you to get to me. Choose which option sounds better. He pulled the door open, paused. Dr. Chen will be here at 10 tomorrow morning. Be ready. Then he was gone, and Lena was alone with her thoughts and the baby kicking steadily against her ribs. The doctor arrived precisely at 10, accompanied by a nurse and enough medical equipment to set up a small clinic in one of the guest rooms. Dr. Chen was 50s, Chinese-American, with steady hands and eyes that had probably seen everything twice. Miss Cruz, I'm Sarah Chen. I understand you haven't had any prenatal care yet. Lena sat on the bed they'd converted into an examination table, feeling exposed in the thin gown Elena had provided. Not really. I couldn't afford it. Well, we'll make sure everything's where it should be. Dr. Chen's voice was professionally kind, the tone of someone who'd learned not to judge her patient's circumstances. How far along are you? About 7 months, maybe 28 weeks? Let's take a look. The examination was thorough and uncomfortable. Dr. Chen measured Lena's belly, checked her blood pressure, drew blood for tests Lena didn't fully understand. The ultrasound machine came out, and suddenly there was the baby on a screen, real, moving, more than just kicks and pressure. Everything looks good, Dr. Chen said, her eyes on the monitor. Baby's measuring right on track, heart rate is strong, no signs of complications. She pointed to the screen. See here? That's the head. And there's a foot. Active little one? Lena couldn't speak, couldn't look away from the image of her child floating in darkness, alive and whole, and completely dependent on her to keep it that way. Do you want to know the sex? Dr. Chen asked gently. Yes, I want to know. It's a girl. A girl. She was having a daughter. The weight of it settled over Lena like a physical thing, responsibility and terror, and something else she didn't have a name for. A girl who'd grow up either protected or destroyed by the circumstances of her birth, depending on how the next few weeks played out. "Thank you," Lena managed. Dr. Chen printed out images from the ultrasound, handed them to Lena like they were precious. "I'm leaving you some vitamins, prenatal supplements, iron, calcium. Take them daily. No alcohol, no smoking, plenty of water and rest. Your blood pressure's slightly elevated, which concerns me given your stress levels. Try to find ways to relax. Relaxing isn't really an option right now. I understand, but for the baby's sake, try." Dr. Chen packed up her equipment, her movements efficient. "I'll be back in 2 weeks to check on you again. If anything feels wrong before then, bleeding, severe pain, decreased movement, you call me immediately. Mr. Vieri has my number." Of course he did. After they left, Lena lay on the bed holding the ultrasound images, staring at the blurry black and white proof that her daughter existed. She'd known, of course, had felt the kicks, seen her belly swell, lived with the reality of pregnancy for months. But seeing the baby on screen made it different, made it impossible to pretend this was happening to someone else. She was going to be a mother, and her daughter's father was a thief who'd sold them both out for $3 million. The tears came then, hot and angry, and Lena let them fall because there was no one to see, no one to judge her for the weakness of crying over circumstances she couldn't control. Elena found her an hour later, still holding the ultrasound images, her eyes swollen and her face blotchy. "Oh, honey," the older woman's voice was soft. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up." She helped Lena to the bathroom, ran a cool cloth over her face, braided her hair back with gentle hands. Mothering gestures that made Lena want to cry all over again because she couldn't remember the last time someone had taken care of her like this. "It's a girl," Lena said. Her voice came out small. "I'm having a girl." "I know. Dr. Chen told Mr. Vieri." Elena met her eyes in the mirror. "He seemed pleased. Why would he care?" "Because you're under his protection now, whether you want to be or not." Elena's hands stilled. "He's not a good man, Lena, but he's not completely bad either. There's honor in him buried under all the violence and business. He won't let anything happen to you or that baby, as long as you're here." "What happens when I'm not here anymore? When he finds Victor and gets his money back?" Elena didn't answer, which was answer enough. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. The baby was restless, moving constantly, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw Victor's face, the way he'd smiled at her, touched her, made promises he'd never intended to keep. She tried to hate him, but the hate wouldn't come. Just a hollow ache where trust used to live. Around 2 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and went downstairs. The house was quiet, but not empty. She could hear voices from somewhere. Low, tense, the kind of conversation that happened behind closed doors. Marco stood in the hallway outside what she'd learned was Adrian's study, his expression neutral. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Something like that." "Kitchen's open. Help yourself to whatever you want." But Lena didn't want food. She wanted answers, wanted to understand what was happening in that room, what plans were being made that would determine her future and her daughter's. Marco's radio crackled. He stepped away to answer it, and Lena moved closer to the study door. Not close enough to be obvious, just close enough to hear. "Trace the money to an account in Grand Cayman." A man's voice, unfamiliar. "Transferred again 2 days later to Hong Kong. We're working on tracking it further, but he's being smart about it." "Not smart enough." Adrian's voice, cold and controlled. "Victor's good with numbers, but he's not a professional. He'll make a mistake." "What about the girl?" Silence. Long enough that Lena's heart started to race. "What about her?" Adrian said finally. "She's a complication. If Victor really doesn't care about her, we're wasting resources keeping her here. Might be simpler to just, no." The word came out flat, absolute. "Sir, I'm just saying, I know what you're saying, and I'm telling you no. She stays here, protected, until this is finished. Are we clear?" "Crystal." "Good. Now get back to work on those accounts. I want to know everywhere that money went and who touched it. Victor's not the only one involved in this. Someone helped him set up those transfers, and I want names." Footsteps approached the door. Lena moved fast, trying to get back to the hallway before anyone saw her, but she wasn't fast enough. The door opened and a man she didn't recognize walked out. Late 40s, expensive suit, the kind of face that was forgettable on purpose. He saw her. His eyebrows went up. "Eavesdropping, Miss Cruz?" "I was getting water." "Kitchen's the other direction." Adrian appeared in the doorway behind him, and his expression when he saw Lena went carefully blank. "James, give us a minute." The man, James, nodded and disappeared down the hallway. Adrian looked at Lena, and she couldn't tell if he was angry or just tired. "How much did you hear?" "Enough to know someone wants me gone and you said no." She met his eyes. "Why?" "Come inside." It wasn't a request. The study was smaller than she'd expected, more intimate. Books lined one wall and a fireplace burned low in the corner. Adrian's desk was covered in papers, a laptop, what looked like surveillance photos of people Lena didn't recognize. He closed the door behind them. "Sit." Lena sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Adrian didn't sit. He poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter, held it without drinking, stared at the amber liquid like it might have answers. "You want to know why I'm protecting you?" he said. "Yes." "Because killing you or letting you go would be the easy option. And I don't take easy options when they compromise long-term strategy." He finally looked at her. "Victor stole from me. That makes him a problem that needs to be solved. But he's also smart enough to know I'll come for him, which means he's watching, waiting. If you disappear, he'll know something happened. He might run further, make it harder to find him. So I'm bait. Your insurance, there's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting." Adrian smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "No, I suppose not." He moved to the chair beside hers, sat down, suddenly closer than she'd expected. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the shadow of stubble on his jaw. "I'm not going to hurt you, Lena." His voice was quieter now, almost gentle. "I'm not going to hurt your daughter. Whatever happens with Victor, whatever I have to do to get my money back and make an example out of him, you and the baby are separate from that. You have my word." "Your word?" She couldn't keep the bitterness out of her voice. "What's that worth?" "More than you think. I don't make promises I can't keep." Victor made promises. Victor's a liar and a thief who got in over his head and thought charm would save him. Adrian's eyes were dark, unreadable. "I'm not Victor." "No, you're something worse." "Probably." He didn't sound offended. "But I'm honest about what I am. I don't pretend to be something better, and I don't make deals I can't honor. You stay here, safe, until this is done. That's the deal. I find Victor, I get my money, and then we figure out what comes next." "And if you don't find him?" "I will." The certainty in his voice was almost frightening. Lena stood, suddenly too tired to keep fighting, too exhausted to care about the details of her captivity. "I'm going back to bed." "Lena." She stopped at the door. "Dr. Chen said you're having a girl." "Yes." "Congratulations." The word was so unexpected, so incongruous with everything else, that Lena almost laughed. Almost. "Thanks," she said instead, and left before he could say anything else that might make her forget he was the man keeping her prisoner. The days continued to blur. Dr. Chen came back as promised, pronounced everything normal, and left more vitamins. Elena brought meals and conversation, carefully avoiding any topic that might lead to questions about how long Lena would be staying or what would happen when she left. Marco maintained his professional distance, always present but never intrusive. And Adrian was everywhere and nowhere. She'd catch glimpses of him, on the phone in his study, walking the grounds with men whose faces she was starting to recognize, standing in the library reading books that looked older than she was. He never approached her directly, never sought her out, but she was aware of him constantly, the weight of his presence in the house, the knowledge that every decision about her life was being made by a man she barely knew. It should have been maddening. It was maddening, but it was also, in a strange way, the safest she'd felt in months. On the 10th day, everything changed. Lena was in the garden, walking the paths Elena had shown her, when Marco appeared at her side. "Mr. Vieri wants to see you now." Something in his voice made her stomach drop. "What happened?" "Just come with me." She followed him back to the house through hallways that suddenly felt too long, too quiet. Adrian was in his study, standing at the window with his back to the door. When he turned, his expression was unreadable. "We found him," he said. "Victor. He's in Mexico City, staying at a hotel under a fake name. My men have eyes on him." Lena's heart kicked into her throat. "When?" "This morning. He got careless, used a credit card we'd been monitoring. Stupid mistake for someone who's supposed to be smart about money." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I'm leaving tonight to bring him back." "And me?" "You stay here. Protected. This doesn't involve you." "He's the father of my child. Of course it involves me." Adrian was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching her face. "Do you want to see him when I bring him back?" The question caught her off guard. Did she? Did she want to face the man who'd lied to her, used her, abandoned her when she needed him most? Did she want to look Victor in the eyes and demand answers she probably wouldn't believe? "I don't know," Lena said honestly. "Think about it. You've got a few days." Adrian moved past her toward the door, then stopped. "Whatever happens, whatever I have to do to make this right, you're still under my protection. That doesn't change." "Why?" The word came out before she could stop it. "Why do you care?" He looked at her, and something flickered in his eyes. Something she couldn't name. "Because someone should," he said simply. Then he was gone, and Lena was left standing in the study holding her belly, where her daughter kicked and kicked and kicked, as if trying to remind her that none of this was theoretical anymore. It was real, and it was happening. And somewhere in Mexico City, the man who destroyed her life was about to learn what happened when you stole from Adrian Vieri. Adrian left that night with 4 men and a duffel bag Lena didn't want to think too hard about. She watched from the window of her room as the SUVs pulled away, their taillights disappearing into darkness that seemed thicker than usual, more final. The house felt different without him. Not safer. Not quieter. Just hollow. Like a stage set waiting for the actors to return. Elena moved through the rooms with her usual efficiency, but even she seemed subdued. Marco doubled the security rotations, and Lena caught glimpses of armed men she'd never seen before patrolling the grounds. "How long will he be gone?" she asked Elena, the next morning, over breakfast she couldn't quite finish. "As long as it takes." Elena refilled her orange juice without being asked. "Could be 2 days, could be a week. Mr. Vieri doesn't rush these things." "What things? What's he going to do to Victor?" Elena's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "Whatever needs doing. Eat your eggs. They're getting cold." Lena pushed the plate away. "I can't stop thinking about it, about seeing him again. I don't know if I want to scream at him or just understand why he did it, if any of it was real. Does it matter? Whether it was real? It matters to me." Elena sat down across from her, a rare break in her constant motion. Men like Victor, they're good at making women feel special, feel seen. They know exactly what to say, how to touch, when to smile. It's a skill, like playing piano or speaking French. Doesn't mean the music isn't pretty while it lasts. That's depressing. That's honest. Elena's hands folded on the table. But here's the thing. You get to decide what happens next, not him, not even Mr. Vieri, though he'd disagree with me saying so. When Victor gets here, when you see him again, you can ask your questions or you can walk away without a word. Either way, you're the one with the power now. I'm 7 months pregnant and living in a house I can't leave. I don't have any power. You're carrying a child that man abandoned. You survived without him. You're still standing. Elena's voice gentled. That's more power than you think. The hours crawled. Lena tried to read, but the words wouldn't stick. Tried to sleep, but her mind kept spinning through scenarios. What she'd say to Victor, how he'd respond, whether Adrian would let them talk at all, or if this was just a formality before whatever came next. The baby seemed to sense her agitation, kicking constantly, pressing against her ribs hard enough to make breathing uncomfortable. Dr. Chen had said stress was bad for the pregnancy, had warned about elevated blood pressure, the risk of early labor. Lena pressed her hands to her belly and tried to breathe slowly, tried to find some center of calm in the chaos swirling through her head. Her daughter deserved better than this. Deserved a mother who wasn't falling apart over a man who'd never deserved her in the first place. On the second night, she dreamed about the hotel. The hallway stretched endless in that way dreams do, and she was pushing her cart, but the wheels wouldn't turn properly. They caught on the carpet, jerked and stuttered, and when she looked down, she saw they were leaving trails of blood. She tried to stop, to turn around, but her hands wouldn't release the handle. Victor appeared at the end of the hallway. He smiled at her, that same warm smile that had convinced her he was different, that he cared, and he held out his hand. "Come on, Lena, we'll figure it out together." But when she reached for him, his hand dissolved into smoke, and she was falling, her belly enormous and heavy, and the baby was crying, but the sound was coming from somewhere she couldn't reach. She woke gasping, her heart hammering, the sheets twisted around her legs. 3 a.m. The house was silent. Lena got up, pulled on the robe Elena had left for her, and went downstairs. She needed water, needed to move, needed to do something other than lie in bed imagining worst-case scenarios. The kitchen lights were already on. Marco sat at the island with a cup of coffee and a tablet, his expression focused. He looked up when she entered, and some of the professional distance in his face eased. "Can't sleep either?" "Bad dreams." Lena went to the refrigerator, poured herself water from the filtered pitcher. "Any news?" "They landed in Mexico City yesterday afternoon. Last check-in was around midnight. Everything's on schedule." "What does that mean? On schedule for what?" Marco's jaw tightened. "For bringing Victor back. That's all I know. Mr. Vieri doesn't share operational details unless he needs to." Lena sat down across from him, cradling her water glass. "How long have you worked for him?" 8 years, since he took over from his father. "And in those 8 years, have you ever seen him spare someone? Someone who stole from him?" The question hung between them, heavy with implications. Marco was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming once against the tablet. "Mr. Vieri's not cruel for the sake of it. He doesn't enjoy violence. But he can't let theft go unpunished. It's about reputation, about making sure people know there are consequences." He met her eyes. "Victor knew the risks when he took that money. Whatever happens to him, he brought on himself. And me? What did I bring on myself?" "Nothing. Your collateral damage, wrong place, wrong time, wrong man." Marco's expression softened slightly. "But for what it's worth, I've never seen Mr. Vieri go this far to protect someone who wasn't family. The security, the doctor, keeping you comfortable. That's not standard protocol for leverage." "Then what is it?" "I don't know, but I've learned not to question his decisions." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the distant creak of the house settling. Lena drank her water and tried not to think about what Adrian was doing right now, halfway across a continent, closing in on a man who'd once made her believe in second chances. "Can I ask you something?" Marco said finally. "Sure." "Do you hate him? Victor?" Lena considered the question, turning it over in her mind like a stone she was examining for flaws. "I don't think so. I'm angry. I feel stupid for believing him. But hate?" She shook her head. "Hate takes energy I don't have. I just want to understand why. Why he chose this. Why I wasn't enough reason to stay. Sometimes there's no good answer. Sometimes people are just selfish, and that's all there is to it. That's what I'm afraid of." Marco's radio crackled to life. He answered it in low tones, mostly listening, his expression giving nothing away. When he signed off, he looked at Lena with something that might have been sympathy. "They're bringing him back. Should be here tomorrow evening." The words hit like a punch. Tomorrow. Less than 24 hours before she'd have to face the man who'd fathered her child and then disappeared like she'd never mattered at all. "I need to go back to bed," Lena said, standing quickly. Too quickly. The room tilted slightly and Marco was there immediately, his hand on her elbow, steadying her. "You okay?" "Fine. Just tired." She pulled away gently. "Thank you. For talking to me. For treating me like a person instead of just a thing to be managed. You are a person. Don't forget that, no matter what happens next." She went back upstairs and didn't sleep at all. The next day dragged on with the weight of inevitability. Elena brought her lunch and tried to make conversation, but Lena couldn't focus on anything except the clock ticking toward evening. "Doctor." Chen called to check in, asked about her stress levels. reminded her to breathe deeply and stay hydrated, as if breathing and water could fix any of this. Around 4, Marco knocked on her door. "They're 30 minutes out. Mr. Vieri wants you to stay in your room until he comes to get you." "I thought I was supposed to see Victor." "You will, when Mr. Vieri says it's time." Marco's expression was carefully neutral. "Just stay put, please." Lena nodded because arguing seemed pointless. She heard them arrive, the sound of vehicles in the driveway, doors opening and closing, voices she couldn't quite make out. Footsteps through the house, moving quickly, purposefully. A door slamming somewhere below. More voices, rising in volume, and then silence that felt worse than any sound. 20 minutes passed. 30. An hour. Finally, a knock. Adrian stood in the doorway looking like he'd aged a year in 3 days. His clothes were rumpled, his jaw dark with stubble, and there was a cut on his knuckles that hadn't been there before. But his eyes were steady, calm, completely focused. "He's downstairs," Adrian said, "in the West Wing. If you want to see him, now's the time." Lena stood, her legs shaky. "Is he hurt?" "Roughed up some. Nothing permanent. He tried to run when we found him." Adrian's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. "Made things more complicated than they needed to be." "What are you going to do to him, after I talk to him?" "That depends on what he tells me, where the money is, who helped him, how much he gave to Dmitri." Adrian stepped aside, giving her room to pass. "You want me there while you talk to him?" "No, I need to do this alone. I'll be right outside the door. You need me, you say the word." She followed him through the house, down hallways she'd never walked before, to a part of the estate that felt colder, less lived in. "The West Wing," he'd said. It sounded innocuous. But when they stopped outside a heavy wooden door with a lock that looked new, Lena understood this wasn't just another room. This was where Adrian kept people he didn't trust. "You sure about this?" Adrian asked, his hand on the doorknob. Lena nodded because speaking would have meant admitting how terrified she was. He opened the door. The room was sparse. A chair, a table, one window with bars that gleamed dully in the fading light. And Victor, sitting in the chair with his hand zip-tied in front of him, looking smaller than she remembered. He looked up when she entered, and his face went through a series of emotions too fast to catalog. Shock. Relief. Fear. Something that might have been shame. "Lena." His voice cracked on her name. "Jesus. Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" The concern in his voice would have been touching if it weren't 3 weeks too late and soaked in irony. "I'm fine, no thanks to you." Adrian stepped back into the hallway, closing the door but not locking it, giving her privacy but staying close enough to intervene. Lena appreciated that more than she'd expected. She stood there looking at Victor and tried to reconcile this man, bruised, tied up, visibly scared, with the one who'd held her in the dark and whispered promises about their future. "I didn't know he'd bring you here," Victor said quickly. "I swear, Lena, I never wanted you involved in any of this." "But I am involved because you made me involved when you got me pregnant and then stole $3 million from a man who owns half this city. It wasn't supposed to go like this. The money was supposed to be our way out, yours and mine and the baby's. We were going to disappear, start over somewhere he'd never find us." The words landed like stones. "Our way out," Lena repeated slowly. "You were planning to use stolen money to build us a life? And you didn't think maybe you should ask me about that first?" "You would have said no. You would have been scared." "I'm scared now. I've been terrified for weeks, wondering if you were dead or if you just didn't care enough to tell me you were alive." Her voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "You left me, Victor. You left me pregnant and alone with a text message and nothing else. And now I find out it was all part of some plan you never bothered to include me in? I was trying to protect you. By abandoning me? By stealing from someone who had every reason to come after anyone connected to you?" Lena moved closer, and Victor actually flinched. "Adrian Vieri found me because of you. Someone tried to kill him while I was standing right there, because of your theft. I've been living in this house for 2 weeks as bait to catch you, and you think you were protecting me? I was going to come back for you. Once things settled down, once I'd moved the money around enough that it couldn't be traced." "The money?" Lena laughed, but it came out bitter. That's what this was always about, wasn't it? Not us, not building a life together, just the money. That's not fair. I loved you. I still love you. You don't love me. You love the idea of me. Some woman who'd be grateful enough for your attention that she wouldn't ask too many questions. Who'd believe whatever you told her because she was desperate and alone and stupid enough to think you were different? Victor's expression crumpled. Lena, please, I made mistakes. I know I did. But we can still fix this. You and me and the baby, we can disappear. I've got accounts set up, money moved to places Adrian can't touch. We can leave tonight, right now. Just say yes. For a moment, just one brief, insane moment, Lena almost considered it, almost let herself imagine a world where Victor's promises were real, where they could vanish into some tropical paradise and pretend the last 3 weeks hadn't happened. Then the baby kicked, hard, and reality crashed back. You really think Adrian Vieri is just going to let us walk out of here? You think he brought you all the way back from Mexico to have a conversation? I think he brought me back to get his money, and I'll give it to him, all of it, as soon as he lets us go. He's not letting anyone go, Victor, least of all you. Then we run, tonight. I've still got contacts, people who can help. Stop. Lena put her hands up, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Just stop. I didn't come here to plan an escape. I came here to understand why you did this, why you left, whether any of it was real. Victor looked at her, and something in his eyes shifted. The desperation faded, replaced by something harder, more honest. You want the truth? Yes. Fine. The truth is I saw an opportunity and I took it. Adrian's operation runs on cash, lots of it, and most of it moves through accounts I had access to. 3 million was just one transaction out of dozens. I thought I could take it and disappear before anyone noticed. He leaned back in the chair, the zip ties pulling tight. And you were convenient. A woman with no connections, no papers, no one who'd come looking if you vanished. The perfect cover for a man trying to go invisible. The words should have hurt, should have cut deep. Instead, Lena just felt tired. So I was never anything more than a prop in your exit strategy. At first, no, but then, Victor's voice softened. Then I spent time with you, got to know you, and it got complicated. You made it complicated. By being human? By actually caring about you? By making me care about you. He sounded almost angry about it. I didn't plan on that. Didn't plan on the baby. Didn't plan on feeling guilty every time I looked at you and knew I was lying. But you kept lying anyway. What else could I do? Tell you the truth and watch everything fall apart? Hope you'd understand and help me run? He shook his head. You would have turned me in or tried to talk me out of it. Either way, I'd lose. So you made the choice for both of us. Yeah, I did, and I'd do it again. The admission hung in the air between them, brutal in its honesty. Lena put her hand on her belly, felt her daughter moving under her palm, and made a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable. I hope the money was worth it, she said quietly, because you lost everything else. She turned toward the door. Lena, wait. No, we're done. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. I don't know what Adrian's going to do to you, and honestly, I don't care. You stole from him. You used me. You abandoned your own child. Whatever happens next, you earned it. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But Lena was already opening the door, already stepping into the hallway where Adrian waited with an expression that gave nothing away. She looked at him, this dangerous man who'd held her captive but never lied to her, who'd protected her when he could have just as easily disposed of her, and she said the only thing that made sense. I don't want to see him again. Whatever you need to do, just do it. I'm done. Adrian studied her face for a long moment, and something in his expression softened. You okay? No, but I will be. She took a shaky breath. Is it true? What he said about the money? That he can give it back? He claims he can. Whether he actually will is another question. And if he does, if he gives you everything back, then he lives. Broken, ruined, but alive. Adrian's voice was calm, practical. If he doesn't, or if he tries to run again, he doesn't leave this property breathing. The brutal simplicity of it should have shocked her. Instead, Lena just felt numb. I need to lie down. Elena's waiting for you upstairs. She'll make sure you have everything you need. Lena started to walk away, then stopped. Adrian? Yeah? Thank you for letting me do this, for not making decisions about Victor without letting me see him first. His eyes met hers, and for just a second, she saw something in them that looked almost like respect. You deserve to know the truth, even if it hurt. She went upstairs and found Elena exactly where Adrian said she'd be, holding a cup of tea and wearing an expression that suggested she already knew everything that had happened. Come on, honey, let's get you comfortable. Lena let herself be guided to her room, let Elena help her out of her shoes and into bed, let the older woman fuss over her in ways that felt maternal and necessary. The tea was chamomile, warm and soothing, and Elena had brought cookies that Lena couldn't imagine eating but appreciated anyway. You did good, Elena said softly, facing him like that, getting your answers. I don't feel good. I feel empty. That's how it works sometimes. You spend so long imagining what you'll say, what they'll say back, and then when it actually happens, it just ends. No big revelation, no dramatic closure, just the truth, and the truth is usually pretty boring. He never loved me. I was just convenient. Maybe at first, but people are complicated. He probably did develop feelings for you, in his own selfish way. Doesn't excuse what he did, but it doesn't make his feelings fake either, just inadequate. Lena sipped her tea and stared at the ceiling. What happens now? Now you rest, let your body recover from the stress. Focus on that baby girl who's going to need you strong when she gets here. Elena smoothed the blanket over Lena's legs. Everything else will sort itself out. You really believe that? I believe Mr. Vieri keeps his promises, and he promised you'd be safe. So yeah, I believe it. After Elena left, Lena lay in the dark and listened to the house settling around her. She could hear voices downstairs, Adrian's, deeper than the others, and several men responding to questions she couldn't quite make out. At one point, she thought she heard Victor shouting, but the sound cut off abruptly. She didn't let herself imagine what that meant. The baby was quiet now, settled, as if sensing her mother's exhaustion. Lena put both hands on her belly and whispered to the daughter she'd never planned but already loved more than she'd thought possible. It's just us now, you and me. And maybe that's okay. Maybe that's enough. Sleep came eventually, dreamless and deep. And when she woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the windows and someone had left fresh flowers on the nightstand. Downstairs, the house felt different, calmer. Like a storm had passed and left everything washed clean. Lena found Adrian in the kitchen, drinking coffee and reading something on his tablet. He looked up when she entered and some of the hardness in his face eased. Morning, how'd you sleep? Better than expected. She poured herself orange juice, sat down across from him. Victor? Gave up the account information. All of it. Wire transfers are in progress. Should have my money back by end of business today. Adrian set down his tablet. He's being transported to a secure location. He'll stay there until I'm satisfied he's told me everything, and then, well, he'll leave the country with instructions never to come back. You're letting him live? Killing him would be satisfying but short-sighted. He's worth more as an example. Someone who stole from me, got caught, lost everything, and now gets to spend the rest of his life knowing he could have had something real and threw it away for money he never got to keep. Adrian's eyes met hers, and honestly, killing the father of your child seemed unnecessarily cruel to you and the baby. The consideration in his voice surprised her more than anything else. Thank you, Lena said quietly. Don't thank me yet. He's still alive, but his life's going to be pretty miserable. I made sure of that. They sat in silence for a moment, the morning light warm on the kitchen table, and Lena realized she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of Adrian, not of what came next, not even of the uncertainty that still loomed over everything. What happens to me now? She asked. Now that you have your money back and Victor's dealt with? Adrian was quiet for a long time, his fingers drumming against his coffee cup. I don't know yet, he said finally, but you're not in danger anymore. Dimitri's been handled. My associates in the city made it very clear what happens to people who try to kill me, and Victor's no longer a threat to anyone. He paused. You could leave. Go back to your life. I'd make sure you had enough money to start over somewhere safe. Or you could stay for a while. until the baby comes. Make sure everything goes smoothly with the pregnancy, that you're not dealing with complications alone. His voice was careful, measured. No strings, no obligations, just insurance. For the baby's sake. Lena looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something she hadn't expected. He actually cared. Maybe not about her specifically, not yet, but about doing the right thing, about making sure she and her daughter were okay. "I'll think about it," she said. Adrian nodded, accepting that. Fair enough. And for the first time since the night someone had tried to kill him and turned her world inside out, Lena felt like maybe, just maybe, she had some control over what happened next. She stayed. Not because she didn't have a choice. Adrian made it clear she could leave whenever she wanted. But because leaving meant going back to that studio apartment with 2 roommates and a job that paid poverty wages, back to worrying about how she'd afford a hospital when the baby came, back to being invisible in a city that chewed up people like her and spit them out without noticing. Here, she had a room that didn't smell like mold, food that didn't come from a dollar menu, a doctor who actually seemed to care whether she and the baby survived the next 2 months. So she stayed, and the days turned into weeks, and something shifted. It started small. Adrian asking if she needed anything during breakfast. Elena teaching her how to make proper coffee in the intimidating machine that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. Marco showing her the security feed so she'd know the estate was actually as safe as they claimed. Then bigger things. Adrian clearing his schedule to drive her to Dr. Chen's appointments himself, sitting in the waiting room with his phone in hand but his attention clearly divided. Coming back from meetings with bags from a baby store downtown. Looking almost embarrassed when Elena unpacked tiny clothes and blankets in a crib that probably cost more than Lena used to make in 6 months. "You didn't have to do this," Lena said, standing in what had become the nursery, a room next to hers that Elena had transformed with soft colors and careful attention to detail. Adrian stood in the doorway, his hands in his pockets, watching her finger the edge of a blanket so soft it felt like touching a cloud. "Baby needs somewhere to sleep. I could have gotten something, eventually. Eventually isn't soon enough. You're 8 months now, doctor." Chen said the baby could come any time in the next few weeks. He moved into the room, picked up a small stuffed elephant from the crib. "Besides, I had Elena handle most of it. I just signed the receipts." "Still, you didn't have to." "Yeah, I did." His voice was quiet, and when she looked at him, his expression was unreadable. "You're here because of me. Because Victor worked for me and stole from me and you got caught in the fallout. The least I can do is make sure you and the baby have what you need." Guilt, Lena realized. He felt guilty. The knowledge sat strange in her chest. Because Adrian Vieri didn't seem like a man who felt guilty about much of anything. But here he was, filling a nursery with things her daughter would need, and the gesture felt more personal than transactional. "Thank you," she said, meaning it. He nodded once, set down the elephant, and left before she could say anything else. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. The baby was active, rolling and kicking in ways that made her entire belly shift and ripple. She'd read somewhere that babies got restless before labor, like they were practicing for the big exit, but Dr. Chen had said she still had at least 2 weeks to go. She went downstairs for water and found Adrian in the living room again, that same glass of amber liquid in his hand, staring at the fire burning low in the fireplace. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered across his face. Not quite a smile, but close. "Can't sleep?" "Baby's doing gymnastics." Lena sat down in the chair across from him, grateful to be off her feet. "You're up late." "Couldn't shut my brain off." He took a sip of his drink, swirled the liquid thoughtfully. "Had a meeting tonight with some associates from the east side. Dimitri's people are trying to reorganize, find new leadership. They're making noise about wanting peace." "Do you believe them?" "Not even a little bit, but I'll meet with them anyway. See what they're really after." He set down the glass. "Politics? It's exhausting. Sounds dangerous." "Everything's dangerous in my world. You learn to navigate it, or you don't last long." He looked at her, and his expression shifted into something softer. "How are you feeling, really? Tired, huge. Ready for this to be over, but also terrified about what happens when it is." Lena put her hands on her belly. "I keep thinking about what kind of mother I'm going to be. Whether I'll be any good at it. You'll figure it out. Most people do." Did your mother? The question came out before she could stop it. Too personal, crossing a line she hadn't meant to cross. But Adrian didn't look offended, just thoughtful. My mother died when I was 12. Cancer. She was complicated. Loved my father despite knowing exactly what he was. Tried to give me and my sister some kind of normal childhood, even though normal wasn't really an option. He picked up his glass again, but didn't drink. She did her best with what she had. That's all anyone can do. I'm sorry. About your mother. It was a long time ago. He was quiet for a moment. My sister raised me, mostly. Isabella. She's 5 years older, married to a lawyer in Boston now. Got out of the family business as soon as she could. Smart woman. Do you see her much? Couple times a year. She doesn't approve of how I live, and I don't blame her for it. But we make it work. Adrian finally drank. A small sip that looked more like habit than desire. She'd like you, I think. She always had a soft spot for people who didn't take any shit. Lena laughed despite herself. I'm not sure I qualify. I've spent the last month doing exactly what you told me to do. Because it made sense, not because you were scared of me. His eyes met hers. There's a difference. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling, the house settling around them. Lena felt the baby shift, a rolling movement that made her breath catch, and she pressed her hand to the spot. Adrian noticed. She okay? Yeah, just active. Lena hesitated, then made a decision that surprised her. You want to feel? Something crossed his face, surprise, maybe uncertainty, but he stood and moved to kneel beside her chair. Lena took his hand and placed it on her belly where the baby was moving, and for a long moment they both stayed still. Then the baby kicked, hard, right against Adrian's palm. His expression transformed. Not quite a smile, but something close to wonder. Wow. She's strong. She's been beating me up from the inside for weeks now. I think she's training for something. Adrian's hand stayed where it was, and the baby kicked again, as if showing off. Does it hurt? Sometimes. Mostly it's just weird, like having an alien living inside you. Lena watched his face, saw the fascination there, the careful attention. You ever think about having kids? Not really. Never seemed like something that fit with my life. His thumb moved slightly, a gesture that was almost tender. But I'm starting to see the appeal. The moment stretched between them, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with shared humanity. Then the baby settled, the movement slowing, and Adrian pulled his hand back. You should get some sleep. Dr. Chen said rest is important in the final weeks. You actually listen during those appointments? Of course I listen. I'm the one driving you there. He stood, offered her his hand to help her up. Come on, I'll walk you upstairs. Lena let him pull her to her feet, grateful for the assistance because getting up from deep chairs had become an Olympic sport. They climbed the stairs together, Adrian matching his pace to hers, and when they reached her door, he paused. Lena? Yeah? I meant what I said before, about you staying as long as you need, even after the baby comes. You don't have to rush back to anything. His voice was careful, like he was picking his words with precision. I know this started as protection, as keeping you safe while I dealt with Victor, but it doesn't have to end just because that situation's resolved. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe there's a place for you here, if you want it, not as a prisoner or as leverage, but as, I don't know, someone under my protection, someone I'm choosing to help because I can. He looked almost uncomfortable with the admission. You and the baby. You'd be safe, provided for. No strings attached except that you'd be part of my household. The offer hung in the air between them, huge and complicated and terrifying in its implications. I need to think about it, Lena said quietly. Take all the time you need. He left, and Lena went into her room and sat on the edge of the bed, her mind spinning. Adrian Vieri was offering her a life. Not just survival, but actual stability, safety, a future where her daughter would never know what it felt like to go hungry or wonder if the heat would work or sleep in a room with 2 other families because rent was too high anywhere else. But what would it cost? What would it mean to accept protection from a man whose business was built on violence and fear? To raise her daughter in a house where armed guards patrolled the grounds and every decision was calculated for maximum advantage. The baby kicked, gentler now, and Lena put her hand over the movement. "What do you think?" she whispered. "Should we stay? Is this crazy?" Her daughter, of course, didn't answer, but somehow the question felt less impossible than it had before. The next morning, Elena found her in the nursery, sitting in the rocking chair someone had placed by the window. Couldn't sleep again? Slept a little, then woke up thinking. Lena gestured at the room. "All of this, it's too much." "It's exactly enough." Elena began folding the tiny clothes that had been delivered yesterday, her movements practiced and sure. "Mr. Vieri doesn't do anything halfway. When he commits to something, he goes all in. That's what worries me. I don't know what I'm committing to by staying here." Elena's hand stilled. "Can I tell you something about Mr. Vieri?" "Please." "When his father ran things, this house was different, colder, more like a fortress than a home. People were scared to walk the hallways, scared to speak unless spoken to. His father was not a good man, brilliant at business, ruthless in negotiations, but cruel in ways that served no purpose except his own ego." Elena sat down in the other chair, her eyes distant. "When he died and Adrian took over, people expected more of the same. A son following in his father's footsteps, but Adrian surprised everyone." "How?" "By being strategic instead of cruel, by choosing violence only when necessary instead of as a first option, by actually caring about the people who work for him, making sure they're paid well and protected." Elena's voice softened. "He's not perfect. He's still dangerous, but he's not his father. And the fact that he's offering you a place here, offering to help you and your baby with no expectations of anything in return, that tells me he sees something in you worth protecting. Or he still feels guilty about Victor. Maybe both." Elena smiled. "Either way, you could do worse than accepting his help. I've worked for this family for 15 years. I know what kind of man Adrian Vieri is, and I know he wouldn't make this offer if he didn't mean it." Lena looked around the nursery, at the crib and the changing table and the shelves already stocked with diapers and wipes and all the things a baby would need. Evidence of care, of attention, of someone thinking ahead on her behalf. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of making the wrong choice, of trusting the wrong person again." "That's smart, but fear shouldn't be the only thing driving your decisions." Elena stood, patted Lena's shoulder with maternal affection. "Think about what you want, not what you're afraid of, and then decide." Dr. Chen's next appointment came with news that made Lena's heart race. "You're dilated to 2 centimeters, the doctor said, her hands gentle during the examination. "Could be any day now, or you might stay at 2 for another week. Every pregnancy is different. So what do I do?" "Stay close to home. No long trips. Keep your hospital bag packed. And if you start having regular contractions stronger than Braxton Hicks, you call me immediately." Dr. Chen helped her sit up. "Everything else looks good. Baby's in position, heartbeat's strong, you're ready." Adrian drove her back to the estate in silence, his expression thoughtful. When they pulled into the driveway, he turned to her. "You want to go to the hospital when the time comes? Or there's a midwife I can call? Someone who does home births. Your choice." "I don't know. Hospital seems safer." "Statistically, yes, but home birth means privacy, no questions about insurance or legal status. The midwife I'm thinking of has been doing this for 30 years. She's good." He paused. "Either way, you'll have the best care available. I'll make sure of it." "Why?" The question burst out of her. "Why do you care so much? You got your money back. Victor's dealt with. I'm not useful to you anymore." Adrian's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, ran a hand through his hair. "You want the honest answer?" "Yes. I don't know. I should have let you go weeks ago. Should have given you enough money to start over and sent you on your way. That would have been the smart play, the clean break." He looked at her, and his eyes were darker than usual. "But every time I think about you leaving, about you and that baby out there on your own, it pisses me off. Makes me want to find Victor again just to break something else." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." His voice roughened. "You're here, under my roof, and that means you're mine to protect. That's how this works. That's how I work." And yeah, maybe it started as guilt or strategy or whatever, but now? He shook his head. Now I just want to make sure you're both okay. Call it instinct. Call it stupidity. I don't care what you call it. The raw honesty in his voice hit her harder than any carefully constructed argument could have. I want to stay, Lena said quietly, after the baby comes. For a while at least. Until I figure out what comes next. Something in Adrian's expression eased. Yeah? Yeah. But I need ground rules. I need to know what this is. What you expect from me. I don't expect anything except that you take care of yourself and the baby. Everything else is up to you. He put the car in park, turned to face her fully. You want to work? I'll help you find something. You want to go back to school? I'll cover it. You want to just focus on being a mother for a while? That's fine too. No pressure, no obligations. And you? What do you get out of this? Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Peace of mind, knowing I did the right thing for once instead of just the profitable thing. It wasn't a declaration of love, wasn't even particularly romantic, but it was honest, and after months of Victor's lies, honesty felt more valuable than any pretty words. Okay, Lena said. Then I'm staying. The relief on Adrian's face was subtle but unmistakable. That night, Lena woke to pain. Not the practiced contractions she'd been having for weeks, but something deeper, more insistent. A tightening that started in her lower back and wrapped around her belly like a fist clenching and releasing. She lay there for a moment, timing the sensation, waiting to see if it would pass. It didn't. Another contraction hit, stronger this time, and Lena fumbled for her phone. 3 a.m. She should wait, should make sure this was real labor before waking anyone. But another contraction rolled through and she found herself dialing before she could talk herself out of it. Adrian answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the hour. What's wrong? I think... She had to pause, breathe through another contraction. I think the baby's coming. I'm on my way. He was at her door in less than 2 minutes, fully dressed, his hair still wet like he'd been in the shower. Behind him, Elena appeared with towels and a calm expression that suggested she'd done this before. How far apart are the contractions? Elena asked, moving into the room with practiced efficiency. Maybe 5 minutes? They started about half an hour ago. Good. That gives us time. Elena turned to Adrian. Call Dr. Chen, tell her we need her here now, and get the room ready. Adrian nodded and pulled out his phone, already dialing. The next hour passed in a blur of pain and preparation. Doctor Chen arrived with her nurse and equipment, transforming one of the guest rooms into a makeshift delivery suite. The contractions got closer together, harder, and Lena found herself gripping Elena's hand hard enough to leave marks. You're doing great, Elena murmured. Just breathe through it. That's it. Adrian stayed nearby, not hovering but present, his face carefully neutral, but his eyes betraying concern. When a particularly strong contraction hit and Lena cried out, he moved closer. What can I do? Nothing. Just stay, please. He pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed, and when the next contraction came, Lena reached for his hand without thinking. He let her squeeze, his grip solid and steady, grounding her through the waves of pain. You're stronger than you think, he said quietly. You've survived everything else. You'll survive this. Dr. Chen checked her progress, and her expression was encouraging. 7 centimeters. Won't be long now. You're doing beautifully, Lena. The pain built and built, consuming everything, until Lena couldn't think about anything except getting through the next contraction, and the next, and the next. Time lost meaning. The room narrowed to just her body, and the baby fighting to be born, and the people around her offering support she couldn't have managed without. Okay, Dr. Chen said finally. You're ready. Next contraction I need you to push. Lena pushed. It felt like being torn apart from the inside. Like her body was doing something it wasn't designed to do, even though every book insisted this was natural, normal, the oldest story in human history. She pushed and screamed and gripped Adrian's hand so hard she thought she might break bones, and he never once pulled away. Again, Dr. Chen commanded. Big push. Come on, Lena. Your daughter wants to meet you. One more push, and then a release so sudden it left her gasping, then crying. A baby crying, loud and angry and unmistakably alive. It's a girl, Dr. Chen said. But Lena already knew that, had known for months. But hearing it now, while watching the doctor lift a tiny, squirming bundle covered in vernix and blood, made it real in a way nothing else had. "She's beautiful," Elena breathed. Dr. Chen cleaned the baby quickly, efficiently, then placed her on Lena's chest, skin to skin, the warmth of new life against her own exhausted body. Lena looked down at her daughter, small and red-faced and perfect in the way newborns never actually are but always seem to be to their mothers, and felt something shift inside her, something fundamental and unbreakable clicking into place. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi, baby girl. I'm your mom." The baby's eyes opened, unfocused and dark, and her tiny hand reached up, grabbing at nothing and everything. Adrian stood beside the bed, looking down at them both, and his expression was softer than Lena had ever seen it, almost vulnerable. "She's perfect," he said quietly. "She's a fighter. Look at those lungs." Lena touched her daughter's cheek, marveling at the softness. "She's going to be trouble." "Good. The world needs more trouble from women who know their worth." Elena busied herself with cleaning up while Dr. Chen finished the medical necessities, but Lena barely noticed. Her entire world had shrunk to the 7-pound human in her arms, who'd just made her a mother. "Have you thought about a name?" Adrian asked. Lena had spent weeks considering options, trying them out in her mind, imagining calling them across playgrounds and writing them on birthday cakes. "Sophia," she said. "Sophia Maria Cruz." "It's perfect." Dr. Chen finished her work, pronounced both mother and baby healthy, and left instructions about feeding and rest and what to watch for. The nurse helped Lena change into clean clothes, got her settled in the bed with Sophia tucked against her side, and then they were alone. Just Lena and her daughter and the man who'd somehow become part of their unlikely family. Adrian sat in the chair beside the bed, his eyes on Sophia with an expression Lena couldn't quite decipher. "Thank you," she said. "For everything. For being here. Where else would I be?" "I don't know. Running your empire, making deals, doing whatever it is you do when you're not playing midwife to unexpected house guests." He smiled, and it transformed his face. "This seemed more important." Sophia made a small sound, and Lena adjusted her position, marveling at how natural it felt to hold this tiny person, like she'd been practicing for this moment her whole life without knowing it. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now you rest, recover, learn how to be a mother. And I make sure nothing and no one threatens either of you." Adrian's voice was firm. "You're under my protection, both of you, for as long as you want to stay. That's a big commitment. I don't make small ones." Lena looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth written in every line of his face. He meant it, meant every word. This dangerous man with blood on his hands and violence in his history was offering her and her daughter safety, stability, a future that didn't include wondering where the next meal would come from or whether the lights would stay on. It should have been terrifying, should have felt like trading one prison for another. Instead, it felt like coming home. "Okay," Lena said, "we'll stay, for now, and we'll see what happens." "That's all I'm asking." Outside, dawn was breaking over the estate, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Inside, a baby slept against her mother's chest, while the man who'd saved them both sat watch. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Lena Cruz felt something that might have been hope. The first weeks with Sophia were chaos wrapped in exhaustion, wrapped in a love so fierce it sometimes scared Lena. The baby ate every 2 hours, cried for reasons Lena couldn't always decipher, and slept in bursts so short that Lena forgot what a full night's rest felt like. Her body ached in new ways, healing slowly from the trauma of birth, and there were moments, usually around 3 in the morning, while Sophia screamed and refused to latch, when Lena wondered if she was cut out for this after all. But then Sophia would settle, her tiny body relaxing against Lena's chest, and those dark eyes would open and seem to see her, really see her, and nothing else mattered. Elena helped. More than helped, she became a lifeline, appearing at exactly the right moments with warm towels or food. Lena didn't have to think about preparing or just steady hands to hold Sophia while Lena showered for the first time in 3 days. Dr. Chen came by twice in the first week, checking on them both, pronouncing everything normal even when it felt anything but. And Adrian surprised her. He didn't hover, didn't try to take over or offer unsolicited advice, but he was there, present in ways that mattered. When Sophia woke screaming at 2 in the morning and Lena was too exhausted to move, he'd appear in the nursery doorway in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, take the baby with careful hands, and walk her around the room while Lena caught 20 minutes of sleep. "You don't have to do this," Lena said one night, watching him sway with Sophia against his shoulder. "I know. Most men wouldn't. She's not yours. You don't have any obligation to. She's in my house, under my protection. That makes her mine to care about." He adjusted Sophia's position, his large hand cradling her head with surprising gentleness. "Besides, she's growing on me. Got a hell of a grip for someone so small." Lena watched him, this dangerous man who'd built an empire on fear and calculation, reduced to making silly faces at a newborn who couldn't focus well enough to appreciate them. Something in her chest tightened. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything, for not making me do this alone." Adrian looked at her over Sophia's head, and his expression was soft in the dim light. "You're not alone. Not anymore." The words settled between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was quite ready to examine too closely. By the third week, Lena was starting to feel almost human again. Her body was healing, Sophia was sleeping in slightly longer stretches, and she'd figured out a routine that mostly worked. She'd even started going for walks around the estate grounds, Sophia strapped to her chest in a carrier Elena had produced from somewhere, breathing fresh air and remembering what it felt like to move her body for reasons other than survival. Marco walked with her sometimes, keeping a respectful distance but always alert. He'd softened toward her over the months, treating her less like a security risk and more like someone who actually belonged here. "You settling in okay?" he asked one afternoon as they circled the garden path. "As much as I can, I guess. It still feels surreal sometimes, like I'm going to wake up and be back in that studio apartment with 2 roommates and no idea how I'm going to afford diapers." "You're not going back there. Mr. Vieri's made that clear." "Has he?" Lena adjusted the carrier, checked that Sophia was still sleeping peacefully. "We haven't really talked about long-term plans. Everything's been so focused on just getting through each day." Marco was quiet for a moment. "He's different with you, with both of you. More, I don't know, human, maybe. He's always been human." "Yeah, but he hasn't always acted like it. The business requires a certain hardness, distance. Can't make the calls he has to make if you're too worried about being nice." Marco glanced at her. "But with you, he lets himself be softer. And with Sophia? I've never seen him like that with anyone." The observation sat heavy in Lena's mind long after they'd returned to the house. That night, Adrian knocked on her door just after she'd gotten Sophia down for what she hoped would be at least a 3-hour stretch. "Got a minute?" he asked. "Sure. Come in." He entered carrying a folder, his expression more serious than usual. Lena's stomach dropped. This was it. This was where he told her the grace period was over, that she needed to start making plans to leave, that he'd been generous enough, and now it was time to move on. Adrian sat in the chair by the window, gestured for her to take the one opposite. "We need to talk about your status. Legal status." "Okay. You said you don't have papers, no citizenship, no visa, nothing documenting that you're legally in the country." "Right, I came with my mother when I was 16. Tourist visa that expired years ago. She died when I was 18 and I've been undocumented ever since." Lena's hands twisted in her lap. "I know that's a problem. I know it limits what I can do, where I can work. It's fixable." Adrian opened the folder, pulled out papers she couldn't read from this distance. "I've got lawyers who specialize in immigration. Good ones. They think we can get you a green card through a couple of different paths, but the fastest route is..." He paused. "The fastest route is marriage." The word hung in the air between them. "Marriage," Lena repeated slowly, "to a U.S. citizen, which would give you immediate legal status, allow you to work legally, access benefits, all of it. And eventually, if you want, you could apply for citizenship." Adrian's voice was carefully neutral. "I'm offering to marry you, on paper. A business arrangement that solves your immigration problem and gives Sophia legitimate legal standing." Lena's heart was racing. "You want to marry me? I want to fix a problem that's going to keep limiting your options. This solves it cleanly." He set down the papers. We'd have to make it look real. Live together, which we're already doing. File joint taxes, maybe attend a few public events together so there's a record. But it doesn't have to be anything more than that. Your room, my room, separate lives that happen to intersect legally. That's a huge commitment for a business arrangement. I've made bigger commitments for worse reasons. Adrian leaned forward, his eyes intense. Look, I know this sounds insane. I know we barely know each other, but the alternative is you living in the shadows forever, unable to work legally, unable to get Sophia proper documentation, always one wrong move away from deportation. This fixes all of that. What do you get out of it? The question seemed to catch him off guard. I get to know you and Sophia are protected, that you have options and legal standing and a future that doesn't depend on staying invisible. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd learned meant he was uncomfortable. And maybe I get to keep you here, both of you. Because the idea of you leaving, of going back out there alone, it doesn't sit right with me. Adrian, you don't have to answer now. Think about it. Talk to the lawyers yourself. Make sure I'm not selling you bullshit. But the offer's on the table. He stood, started for the door, then turned back. And for what it's worth, this isn't charity. You've brought something into this house that wasn't here before. Something good. I'd like to keep it around. After he left, Lena sat in the chair holding the folder and trying to process what had just happened. Adrian Vieri wanted to marry her, for immigration purposes, as a business arrangement. Except it didn't feel like business. Not the way he'd looked at her. Not the way his voice had roughened when he talked about her leaving. She opened the folder, read through the papers. Everything he'd said was true. The lawyers had outlined multiple paths to legal status, and marriage was by far the fastest and most certain. There were other options, but they'd take years and had no guarantee of success. This was practical, strategic, the smart choice. So why did it feel like something more? She talked to the lawyers, spent 2 hours on a video call with a woman named Rebecca Chen, who walked her through every detail, every implication, every risk and benefit. The marriage would need to appear real to pass immigration scrutiny. They'd be interviewed separately and together. Their living situation would be examined. But if they could maintain the appearance of a genuine relationship, Lena's green card would be approved within months. And the divorce? Lena asked. How does that work? If we want to end this arrangement? Rebecca's expression was carefully neutral. You'd need to wait at least 2 years to avoid red flags. After that, you can file for divorce, and your immigration status wouldn't be affected. You'd keep your green card regardless. 2 years, minimum. Pretending to be married to Adrian Vieri. Lena thanked Rebecca and ended the call, her mind spinning. That night, Sophia was fussy. Wouldn't settle, wouldn't eat, just cried with that particular newborn rage that suggested the world was fundamentally wrong and nothing would ever be right again. Lena tried everything, rocking, singing, walking, feeding, but nothing worked. Around midnight, Adrian appeared. Want me to try? Lena handed over the screaming baby gratefully. Good luck. She hates me tonight. She doesn't hate you. She's just working through some stuff. Adrian cradled Sophia against his chest, began that swaying walk that seemed to be the only thing that sometimes worked. Aren't you, Sophia? Just having a rough night. We all have those. He hummed something, no real melody, just a low sound that rumbled in his chest. And somehow, impossibly, Sophia began to quiet. Lena watched them from the rocking chair, exhausted and overwhelmed and suddenly certain of something she'd been dancing around for weeks. Yes, she said. Adrian looked up. What? Yes, I'll marry you. The immigration thing, the arrangement, whatever you want to call it. Lena stood, moved closer. But I need to know it's real, not the marriage. I understand that part's just paperwork. But this, us, you helping me raise Sophia, being part of our lives. I need to know that's real and not just you being strategic. Sophia had fallen asleep against his shoulder, her tiny face peaceful for the first time in hours. Adrian's eyes met Lena's and something in his expression shifted, opened. It's real, he said quietly. I didn't plan on it being real. Didn't plan on caring about you or getting attached to a baby who isn't even mine. But here we are. And yeah, it scares the hell out of me, but it's real. Okay then. Lena felt something loosen in her chest. Relief, maybe. Or hope. Let's do this. They married 3 weeks later in Adrian's study with Marco and Elena as witnesses and Sophia sleeping in a bassinet nearby. The ceremony took 10 minutes. The officiant, a judge who owed Adrian favors, pronounced them married with all the emotion of someone reading a grocery list. Lena wore a simple dress Elena had helped her choose. Adrian wore a suit. They exchanged rings that felt heavier than they should, and when the judge said they could kiss, Adrian leaned in and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was supposed to be perfunctory but lingered just a second too long. "Congratulations," Elena said afterward, her eyes suspiciously bright. "You make a beautiful family." The word family settled over Lena like a blanket, warm, strange, right in ways she hadn't expected. The immigration interview came 2 months later. They sat in a sterile office while a stern woman named Agent Morrison asked them questions designed to catch inconsistencies. "How did you meet?" Adrian didn't hesitate. "She worked at a hotel I own. We crossed paths during an incident, and I offered her protection. Things developed from there." "When did you know you wanted to marry her?" "When I realized I couldn't imagine my life without her and Sophia in it." The truth in his voice made Lena's breath catch. Agent Morrison turned to her. "And you, Mrs. Vieri? When did you know?" "Mrs. Vieri." The name still felt foreign. "When he held my daughter at 3 in the morning and looked at her like she was his own. When he made me feel safe for the first time in years. When I stopped being afraid and started being hopeful." Lena met the agent's eyes. "I know it looks fast. I know our circumstances aren't traditional, but what we have is real." More questions followed. Details about their daily life, about their routines, about small intimacies that prove they actually lived together. Adrian answered with the same calm precision he brought to business negotiations, but his hand found Lena's under the table and squeezed gently. Afterward, in the car, Lena let out a breath she'd been holding for an hour. "That was terrifying. You did great." She believed us. Because it was true. Most of it, anyway. Lena looked at him. "When you said you couldn't imagine your life without us, did you mean that?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the road. "Yeah, I meant it." The green card arrived 6 weeks later. Lena held the small plastic card and felt the weight of possibility it represented. She could work now, legally, could open a bank account in her own name, could exist in the world without constantly looking over her shoulder. She found Adrian in his study, the door open, papers spread across his desk. "It came," she said, holding up the card. He looked up, and his smile was genuine. "Congratulations, you're legal now." "Thanks to you." Lena sat in the chair across from him. "I've been thinking about what comes next, about what I want to do now that I actually have options." "And?" "I want to go back to school, finish my degree. I was 2 years into a nursing program when my mother got sick, and I had to drop out." She twisted the green card in her hands. "I want to finish. Want to actually do something with my life beyond just surviving." "Then do it. I'll cover tuition, books, whatever you need." "I can't ask you to." "You're not asking, I'm offering." Adrian set down his pen. "We're married now. My resources are your resources. That was part of the deal." The deal was immigration status, not bankrolling my entire education. The deal was whatever I decided it was, and I'm deciding it includes making sure my wife has the tools to build the life she wants. His voice softened. "Let me do this, Lena. Let me help." She wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some kind of independence, some proof she wasn't just dependent on his money and power. But the alternative was waiting tables while trying to parent a baby and somehow saving enough for tuition that would take years to accumulate. "Okay," she said finally. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Lena enrolled in an online nursing program that let her work around Sophia's schedule. The coursework was harder than she remembered, her brain rusty from years of not using it for anything beyond survival math, but she pushed through. Elena watched Sophia during study sessions. Adrian quizzed her on anatomy terminology while they ate dinner. Marco made sure she had quiet time when she needed to focus. The house that had started as a prison had become something else entirely. a home. Sophia grew. 6 months, then 9, then a year. She learned to roll over, to sit up, to pull herself standing while clutching furniture. Her first word was mama, and Lena cried. Her second was Ade, her baby attempt at Adrian's name, and the look on his face was something Lena would remember forever. He'd been reading her a story before bed, Sophia curled in his lap, when she'd looked up at him and said it clear as day. Aid. Adrian had frozen, his expression cycling through shock and something that looked dangerously close to tears. Did she just? She did. Lena watched from the doorway, her heart full. She knows who you are. I'm not her father. No, but you're the man who's been here every day of her life, who walks her when she's fussy and reads to her before bed and makes faces that make her laugh. Lena moved into the room, sat on the arm of his chair. Biology doesn't make family, love does, and she loves you. Adrian looked down at Sophia, who was babbling happily now, pleased with herself for mastering new sounds. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I love her too, both of you. I know that wasn't part of the plan, that this was supposed to be an arrangement, but it stopped being an arrangement months ago. Lena put her hand over his. For me, at least. I don't know when it happened exactly, but somewhere between the late-night feedings and you teaching me about wine and Sophia calling you Ade, this became real. Real as in I love you. As in I want this to be more than just a legal arrangement. As in maybe we stop pretending this is temporary and admit we're building something permanent. Adrian set Sophia down in her crib. She protested briefly but settled, then stood and pulled Lena to her feet. His hands framed her face and his eyes searched hers with an intensity that stole her breath. I love you, he said. I've been trying not to, trying to keep this professional and clean and uncomplicated. But you made that impossible. You and Sophia, you changed everything. Good. I don't want uncomplicated. I want real. I want messy and difficult and all the things that come with actually building a life together. He kissed her then, properly, the way he hadn't since their wedding. It was different from that brief press of lips in front of the judge. This was hungry, searching, full of months of restraint finally breaking. Lena kissed him back with everything she had, pouring weeks of wanting and uncertainty and hope into the contact. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Adrian pressed his forehead to hers. So what now? We're already married, already living together. What changes? Everything. Nothing. Lena smiled. We stop sleeping in separate rooms. We stop pretending this is temporary. We figure out how to actually be married for real instead of just on paper. I can work with that. They moved slowly, carefully, learning each other in new ways. Adrian was patient, considerate, careful of Lena's body still healing from childbirth, and the vulnerabilities that came with trusting someone after betrayal. Lena was surprised by her own capacity for want, for desire, for opening herself to someone who'd started as her captor and become something infinitely more complex. The sex was good, sometimes great, sometimes awkward because Sophia would wake up at exactly the wrong moment or they'd laugh at how out of practice they both were. But it was theirs, and it was real, and it was building something new from the wreckage of what had come before. Life settled into a rhythm. Lena attended classes online and did her clinical rotations at a hospital downtown that didn't ask too many questions about why the wife of Adrian Vieri was training to be a nurse. Sophia grew into a toddler who ran more than walked and asked why about everything with the persistence of someone training to be a lawyer. Adrian gradually shifted his business away from the darker edges, investing more in legitimate ventures, using his influence for things that didn't require violence. He'd never be entirely clean. Too much history, too many connections, too many people who expected the man who'd inherited his father's empire to maintain certain standards. But he tried. For Lena, for Sophia, for the family they were building. On Sophia's third birthday, they threw a party in the garden. Nothing huge, just Elena and Marco and Dr. Chen and a few of the estate staff who'd become friends. Sophia wore a princess dress and a tiara and ran around with frosting on her face while Lena took pictures she'd treasure forever. Adrian found her later, standing at the edge of the garden, watching Sophia play. Happy? He asked. Yeah, I really am. Lena leaned into him when he wrapped an arm around her waist. Never thought I'd end up here. Wife of a former crime lord, mother to a kid who thinks bedtime is a suggestion, actually finishing my nursing degree. Former crime lord? Reforming crime lord better? Marginally. He kissed the top of her head. I never thought I'd end up here either. Married, a father in everything but biology, actually caring about things beyond profit margins and power plays. Life's funny that way. It really is. Sophia ran over, demanding they come see something important, and they let themselves be pulled into her orbit. Later, after the party, after Sophia had crashed hard from sugar and excitement, Lena and Adrian sat on their bed now, shared, the separate rooms abandoned months ago, and talked about the future. I've been thinking about starting a foundation, Adrian said, using some of the money to actually help people instead of just accumulating more of it. Job training programs, maybe? Housing assistance for families in situations like yours was. Wow. That's huge. Seemed appropriate. Way of giving back. Making sure what happened to you doesn't keep happening to other women in impossible situations. He played with her wedding ring, spinning it absently on her finger. And I thought maybe you'd want to be involved. Once you finish your degree, use your skills to help design programs that actually work. I'd love that. They talked into the night about possibilities, about the future, about the family they were building and the legacy they wanted to leave. It wasn't perfect. They still fought sometimes, about money, about safety, about how much of Adrian's old life needed to stay buried and how much could be transformed. But they worked through it, because the alternative was losing what they'd built, and neither of them was willing to let that happen. 5 years after that night in the hotel hallway, when bullets had shattered Lena's invisible existence, she stood in a hospital parking lot in scrubs that bore her name and actual credentials. She'd passed her boards, was officially a registered nurse, had a job at the same hospital where she'd done her training, working in the ER because she'd discovered she liked the chaos, the immediacy, the way every shift was different. Adrian was waiting in the car with Sophia, who was 8 now, and already showing signs of her mother's stubbornness and her father's, because that's what he was now, in every way that mattered, strategic mind. "How was your first day?" he asked when she slid into the passenger seat. Exhausting, terrifying, amazing. Lena kissed him, then reached back to ruffle Sophia's hair. "How was school, baby?" "Boring. When can I work at the hospital too?" "When you're older and have gone through about 1,000,000 years of school." "That's not fair." Adrian caught Lena's eye in the rearview mirror, and they shared a smile. Their daughter, brilliant and impatient and so full of life it sometimes overwhelmed them both. That night after Sophia was in bed and they were collapsed on the couch with wine and exhaustion, Adrian pulled Lena close. "You know what I was thinking about today?" "What?" "How different everything would be if that kid hadn't tried to kill me. If you just finished your shift and gone home and we'd never met." Lena considered it. "I'd probably still be cleaning hotel rooms, still be invisible. Probably would have given up on nursing school and settled for survival. And I'd still be running my father's empire exactly the way he built it. All violence and fear and no room for anything soft. So, in a weird way, attempted murder was the best thing that ever happened to both of us. Not sure I'd phrase it quite that way in mixed company, but yeah." He kissed her temple. "You gave me a life worth living instead of just an empire worth running. You and Sophia. You made me want to be better. You did that yourself. I just gave you a reason to try." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, wrapped in each other and the life they'd built from circumstances neither had chosen, but both had transformed. Sophia appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "I had a bad dream." Adrian stood immediately, scooped her up even though she was getting too big for it. "Come on, princess, let's get you back to bed." Lena watched them go. This man who'd started as her captor, and this daughter who'd been born from betrayal, and felt grateful for every impossible twist that had led her here, to this house, this family, this life that had begun with fear and survival, and grown into something she'd never dared imagine. She finished her wine and went upstairs to find Adrian reading Sophia a story, his deep voice turning Dr. Seuss into something almost poetic. Sophia was already half asleep, her small hand clutching his shirt like an anchor. Lena stood in the doorway and committed the scene to memory. Because this was what mattered. Not the money, or the power, or the dangerous history that would always shadow Adrian's name. Just this. A man reading to a child who loved him. A family built from fragments and transformed into something whole. Later, much later, when Sophia was definitely asleep, and they were in their own bed, Adrian pulled Lena close and said the words he'd started saying every night after that first real kiss. I love you. I love you too. Simple words, not enough to capture everything they meant to each other, everything they'd survived and built and become. But they were true, and they were theirs, and they were enough. Outside, the estate stretched into darkness, protected and peaceful. Inside, a family slept. Unconventional, complicated, born from chaos but built with intention. And in the morning, they'd wake up and do it all over again. Building their life one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of choosing each other over and over until choosing became as natural as breathing. It wasn't the life Lena had imagined when she was pushing a cleaning cart through hotel hallways, invisible and forgotten. It wasn't the life Adrian had planned when he'd built his empire on his father's foundation of violence and fear. But it was theirs. Completely, impossibly, perfectly theirs. And that was more than enough.